Erhard Busek here with us, which is always terrific because he is an original, imaginative thinker, provocative in many ways. And needless to say, for all those of you who are from Austria, from Central and Eastern Europe and Southeastern Europe, who have known Erhard for many years, he was a key leader on these issues, even before the fall of the Berlin Wall, somebody who was interested in what people behind the Iron Curtain were thinking, those people who were in Yugoslavia, in front of the Iron Curtain, but still in a communist country. And he is responsible for the fact that many of us are engaged today with the Erste Stiftung on the project of Europe's futures, and with, in fact, bringing forward these countries into Europe and the many people. And of course, at the Alpbach Forum, he was fundamental, as Andreas just told us a little while ago, of bringing this youthful dimension forward. The event right now is that we will show a film that the Erste Foundation made on Erhard and his life and work. After that, we are honored to have George Papandreu, the former Prime Minister of Greece, who will give us a keynote of about 10-15 minutes. He was supposed to come, but unfortunately at the last minute he could not. This will be followed by Vesna Pusić, the former Deputy Prime Minister of Croatia and the Foreign Minister of Croatia, a friend of many of us here. She's also a member of the board of the Institute for Human Sciences. Then Andreas will kindly speak. And last but not least, and very importantly, we have the rector of the University of Rijeka, who is sitting just there, Snježana Prijić-Samaržija, who will give us a bit from the aspect of the important role that the University of Rijeka is playing in this whole joint endeavor. So let's first see the short film about Erhard.
I have to confess I fell in love with Southeast Europe, but also with Central Europe. And I may tell you why. I think this is for you the background why you are sitting here.
He was a crystallization point for an argument which created, as I called it, lots of children who got caught by politics in a way through him, like I did.
Well, I participate in the experiment, so I cannot be very objective. Erhard provided me with the opportunity to participate at the European Forum Alpbach. He provided me a scholarship.
I met Erhard when I was a student, and I was very much intrigued by his political views.
It was an activity of the young generation. It was not about European Union integration, deepening and widening and whatever the language is. They had the feeling everything was destroyed through Nazism and the war that destroyed Europe. So far, I met here students after the Budapest Revolution 1956, 1968.
In discussing with, all these personalities we know today who basically prepared the floor for the revolutions, it was about principal values, right?
When he said Europe, he meant really Europe.
The general aim must be, how can the social situation be improved? Not only by governments, they are not very effective on this, but by the activities of individuals and associations.
Ta osoba je učinila puno za ovaj region, ta osoba veruje u ovaj region.
Erhard was there from the beginning, and he opened us many doors.
Actually, the idea that I had at that time, I would have never thought about expanding to Central and Eastern Europe if it had not been for Erhard Busek.
There was nobody in Austria who had more insights, more historic knowledge, and more relationships with the respective countries.
Hallo, danke für den Anruf. Entschuldige vielmals, ich habe mich geirrt, wir fahren am Samstag. Ich komme circa aus Sarajevo irgendwie, zeitlich in der Früh um 10 Uhr und wir fahren dann um 11, halb 12.
Vozio me u Mađarsku na konferenciju i onda ja kažem ja bih da iskoristim priliku u Brunu da kupim knjige, pošto čitam na mađarskom. Kaže, nema problema, vozit ću te ja gde treba i onda me odveze čovek do shopping mola, sedi tamo u onom njegovom Mercedesu ispred, čeka me da ja pokupujem knjige za Brunu. Znaš, ništa za njega nije bio problem nikad.
What are the politicians afraid of?
One of the issues which we have today is that nobody knows who stands for what, because everybody is looking at opinion polls on the one side. On the other side, the necessity to be re-elected, which for Erhard never was an issue.
You might laugh, politicians are afraid of decision making. If you are doing decisions, I think you are changing some things, and nobody is really eager because it's easier and you are not disturbed by your daily life and everything is nice.
He actually, quite frankly, he didn't give a shit whether people voted for him or not. He basically did those things that he believed were right.
I have two clear-cut proposals. The one is that all the countries of the region shall be candidate countries for the European Union. Why? They are under pressure to move to the rules of the European Union, and the politicians are not anymore allowed to have silly ideas, which is always also possible for all politicians.
The fact that he always could pronounce the perspective always brought him into conflict with reality.
A true European, he was an optimist and he was a visionary.
And he had a foresight.
We are living in a time where the danger is quite huge that we are in the beginning of the Third World War. We need quite a more tough discussion about what is Europe, what has Europe to contribute.
I, of course, want to welcome Erhard. It's just fantastic that you join us here today.
That physical weakness had zero to do with his mental fitness.
Mislim, on je morao da radi do posljednjeg trenutka. On je to sam govorio.
You know, basically, Erhard gave me lots of continuity in my life, because throughout the different jobs, he was always there. He always had an opinion.
Whenever we met and we discussed some issues and we finished our meeting, he always asked me, okay, so what is my homework? Let's repeat.
He was so incredibly vivid and so full of life.
Freitag 6. Juni, Dienstag 3. ist heute. Dann müssen wir noch schauen, wo der 4. ist.
There were so many moments where I just picked up the phone and just called him and said, Erhard, was tun wir jetzt?
Ich bin gerade mitten in einer Filmaufnahme, ich rufe dich dann gleich an. Ja?
Okay, sorry. Okay, we're waiting for George Papandreu to connect via Zoom. Nicola, if you can send a message to his secretary, Katerina Limbrino. You already did. Very good. So I'll use the time to introduce Papandreu very briefly. Some of you know him personally or publicly, but I think it's always good to remind ourselves of it. Papandreu is the former Prime Minister of Greece. He's the former Foreign Minister of Greece. He is the former Education Minister of Greece. He is a true European. I remember one of my first meetings with him at the Simi Symposium, which is a retreat that he has organized since 1998 and that I've been honored to be a member of since then. In that first meeting, he said, "I'm proud to be from the Balkans," which I share completely with him and not take this as something else. A true leader in the sense that he is a European leader, a world leader. He is also currently the General Secretary of the Socialist International for many years now. In fact, he was preceded by Antonio Guterres, who is now Secretary General of the United Nations and who also came there. One of the many stories that he told us over the years was when he was 16 years old, 15, 16 years old, the Greek colonels came to the dictatorship in Greece in 1967. The military came to their house of his father, Andreas Papandreu, who was also Prime Minister of Greece, and the soldiers put a gun to young George's head and threatened the whole family that they had to leave the country because the colonels were taking over. So that's one of his first political and life experiences of having had a gun to his head. He was educated in the US and in Sweden. He's a fluent Swedish speaker, went to high school there because the family, of course, was in exile. He finished Amherst College, studied at Harvard University, and of course had many, many friends in the US. He was someone who, as you know, initiated the rapprochement with Turkey that was called the earthquake diplomacy. When there was an earthquake in Turkey, he extended a hand and sent relief and aid and Greek nurses and doctors and relief workers to Turkey. And with then Turkish Foreign Minister, the late Ismail Cem, established a very close relationship. In fact, the Simi Symposium gives out every year now, an award called Ismail Cem Award. So, you know, somebody who understood that you had to take the lead with your counterparts in overcoming age-old differences and conflicts. I'm only wondering whether we specified many times 7 o'clock Ceres time, 8 o'clock Athens time, which is right now. So, but let's hope for the best. George, in many ways, led the charge. And then as his political career progressed, he became prime minister at the worst times of all, at the time of the economic crisis in 2009. And my words to him were, George, you were the right person in the right job at the wrong time. He was basically burnt by this experience. He told we would have the symposium, he would come from Brussels, we would ask him what happened, and he said, this is the way it looks. I'm in the room with Van Rompuy, Merkel, and Sarkozy. And then at one point, Van Rompuy is kicked out of the room and I'm left with Merkel and Sarkozy and we negotiate. And that's how things went through. You know the whole story. His finance minister, George Papakonstantinou, has written a very good book about this, and there's been a lot written. But all this to say that Greece stayed in the euro thanks to François Hollande, who slammed his fist on the table and said, we are not going to let Greece leave the Eurozone, because who knows if we pull the thread from underneath this. This is Vesna Pusić, who has joined us. Hello, Vesna. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm just giving an introduction. We just saw a movie about Erhard Busek, commemorating all his great work in Central and Eastern Europe, Southeastern Europe, the role he had here in Cres with the University of Rijeka and establishing the Center for Advanced Studies, and of course, all his work with the Erste Foundation. I'm currently giving an introduction to George Papandreu, who is not yet, like you are, on the screen. So as we wait for George, I will ask you on the spot, you know, that's what friends are for, to put you in a spot immediately, to give your speech on these issues of Europe and the enlargement. Of course, we've discussed over the 3 days, and we're sorry that you couldn't be here. The challenge is, of course, the candidacy that Ukraine will get, hopefully, in the coming days. But, you know, see from your vantage point how you see the things progressing and the future of this region in Europe.
Thank you very much. I'm also sorry I'm not there, but the circumstances were such. All my guests who are sitting downstairs say hello to everybody. I was last also speaking via Zoom to a meeting in Cres last year when Erhard Busek was actually there. And we were discussing our usual topics, not very different from what you are discussing now and what we are discussing now, on the Western Balkans, on Southeastern Europe, on this region that Busek really loved. And in a way, we always somehow saw him as part of us, part of this region. But one thing that, well, in all our discussions, one thing that was so characteristic for him and that he also used last time when he was in Cres and we were discussing, he said, all of these things that you're saying are nice and wonderful, but I want to hear something specific, something concrete, something that actually can be done, rather than all the criticism and complaints and everything that holds water. But I don't know whether I should continue because there is some.
Yes, please continue, and I will ask George to kindly be patient for a few minutes until you tell us what you want to tell us.
Sure.
Anyway, so his main comments on all our discussions was, I want to hear something that's specific enough that it actually can be implemented, that this can be done. And this was so very much Erhard Busek. And I think in a way, I will always in the future remember this as a sort of reality check. You know, we discuss, complain, analyze, but actually it is important. And this is the probably the most attractive thing between and connection between social science and politics, which I always saw a little bit like applied social science, that there is this reality check of, can you do something with what you're saying, what you're analyzing, what you understand, what can be done with that? And that was very much Busek's approach. So in honor of him, I will try to name 5 or 6 points that of things that actually I think could be done in order to change the pace and change the stalemate that Southeastern Europe is facing on its way to the European Union. I have to declare as a sort of introductory sentence, I don't think there is any other desirable road for Southeast Europe or Western Balkans but membership of the European Union. There are many discussions about the so-called Eastern Partnership countries, especially now that Ukraine is a victim of this horrible aggression. And of course, I also support the move that Ukraine gets candidacy status. As we know, unfortunately, candidacy status is more a symbolic thing than an actual, let's say, definition of some kind of deadline when you will become members. But Eastern Partnership countries are unfortunately in a position where Russia also has some, I would say, territorial aspirations, to put it mildly. In Western Balkans, Russia has no territorial aspirations. Western Balkans is Europe. Western Balkans is used exclusively to disrupt and destabilize Europe. And therefore, it's Europe's responsibility to consolidate its own territory and to find strategies that can help these countries and especially these societies, because we forget that we can disagree with leaderships, but we don't. I mean, these societies are part of Europe, and these societies deserve to get a European leadership. And even regardless of deserving, it's simply a part of a political entity that needs to consolidate its territory. So we've tried, as they say, we've tried the rest, let's try the best. The best model of joining to this day, when we speak about Eastern Europe, of joining European Union, was the so-called Baltic model, with the three Baltic states already in the 90s, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, were the three Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland, decided to pair with them, to simply choose one, Denmark with Lithuania, Sweden with Latvia, and Finland with Estonia, and work with them all the way. They trained their civil servants, they helped them harmonize the legislation, they helped them implement decision-making processes, first define decision-making processes, then implement decision-making processes. And they, of course, also spoke for them within the European institutions. Okay, it was different times, there were different countries, but I would say that this is a hands-on approach that works, that proved in the Baltic case that it works. And I think this type of hands-on approach is needed for the 6 Western Balkan countries. Unfortunately, their Sherpas or partners on this road cannot be the neighboring countries, including Hungary and Austria, in my opinion, because they have their own political agendas or are suspected of having their own political agendas in the region, and therefore don't have that type of trust in these societies. It cannot be the big members. So in my opinion, they can be the 3 Nordics, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, Ireland, Portugal, and Netherlands. Those are 3 strong democracies, very pro-European countries, and absolutely with no political agenda in the region. So they would be trusted by the societies, which I think is very important. I think we should always look at the trust within the societies rather than primarily or even only sometimes in the political elites, because one process we can actually follow in these countries is that as the political elites become more authoritarian and move to the east, the societies actually move to the west, and sometimes even by emigrating west. So I think the focus on societies is also very, very important here. This is doable. These countries are there, and this is, I would say, a hands-on approach by the European Union. I've looked more specifically also at Bosnia-Herzegovina, because I think that Bosnia-Herzegovina is, in a way, a test case of the Western Balkans. Very often it's said that it's important to get Serbia move forward and into the European Union, and everybody else will follow. I think that maybe now it's time to surround Serbia with success, to sort of show that success is possible and that moving forward is possible, and that will put sufficient pressure on the Serbian leadership. And also, all these countries look at each other and compare with each other. And in that sense, I think that would be a sort of motivating factor. But I looked specifically at Bosnia-Herzegovina because it's, in a way, I don't know, I wanted to say the most neglected country, but I wouldn't say the most neglected country. I would say the country with the most aggressive disruptors within the country itself. So for Bosnia-Herzegovina, in addition to this Baltic model of accession, I would say that for the time being, it's important to strengthen the European forces in Bosnia-Herzegovina that are already there, that they have added, I think, about 500 soldiers in the meantime, but that would be, I think, needed. We would need to strengthen that and to have it present throughout Bosnia-Herzegovina, not only in the federation, but also very visibly present in the so-called Republika Srpska. The other thing that is needed is definitely to start working on a new constitution, very hands-on and very specific thing. But at the moment, as probably most of you know, the constitution of Bosnia-Herzegovina is Appendix 4 of the Dayton Peace Agreement. And you cannot have a constitution that is an Appendix 4 of a peace agreement from 30 years ago. Bosnia-Herzegovina also needs a new electoral law. However, not of the kind that's being suggested, especially not of the kind that's being suggested by the leader of the HDZ, one of the Croatian parties, Dragan Čović, which would only re-emphasize the ethnic divisions. I think it needs, first of all, we need to accept that one person, one vote is the basic principle of any modern democracy. There's no democracy without that principle. On top of that, you can have, and you do have in many countries, additional protection of collective rights. In this case, let's say collective ethnic rights. But that cannot be, ethnic rights cannot be a substitute for individual civic citizens' rights. Finally, I think something that international community, but European Union in particular, I think made a mistake at is communicating almost exclusively with the ethnic leaders. I think we have to start communicating, talking, engaging political parties and political leaders that are not ethnically based. And if you followed what was happening relatively recently in Brussels, the head of this Croatian political party, HDZ, from Bosnia-Herzegovina, refused to participate in the meeting called by the president of the European Council because he said there were only Serb and Bosniak parties. This is not true. There were actually non-ethnic parties, but they are trying to push them into this ethnic mold in order to, in a way, disqualify them. This is possible because that has been accepted by the international interlocutors. I think we have to put an end to that, and through that give space for the non-ethnic parties in Bosnia-Herzegovina, of which now there are at least 2, with presence throughout the country and with a very interesting selection of young leaders. So as Busek would say, if you ask me what concretely should be done, these are some of the things that I think specifically could and should be done to promote the Western Balkans, and in this case, also in addition to Western Balkans in general, Bosnia-Herzegovina, towards more than its road to Europe, I'd say towards its role in strengthening and consolidating Europe in this difficult and dangerous times for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. If you have a few minutes, please do stay with us. If you have other obligations, please feel free, but we're very grateful that you took the time. George Papandreu has joined us now, and we're very grateful to George for joining us at this moment. George, we know that you were supposed to come, but as happens in our lives, other obligations took precedence. I did introduce Vesna and you beforehand. The one thing that I did forget to say, and Johannes was kind enough to remind me, out of the many things I said, I forgot to say that it was during the Greek presidency of the European Union in 2003 that the Thessaloniki summit, you were then foreign minister of Greece, decided to open the doors for full membership and accession to the Western Balkan countries. And in the famous words of the then president of the Commission, Romano Prodi, without ifs and buts, provided that they met the Copenhagen criteria and all the necessary acquis communautaire. There is one trivia point which I need to mention here, is that, first of all, happy birthday, George. And the second thing is that Andreas Treichl, who is here with us, and you share the same day and the same year of birth. I will not mention the year. The date is the date is the 16th of June. And so there is some connection here beyond our political beliefs in a strong and united Europe. So George, please take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan, for those kind words. And sorry, I'm a bit late. I just got off a plane, which was a bit late, showing that we're having a little more tourism in Greece than we normally would have in this post-COVID, well, not exactly post-COVID, but anyway, post a recession of COVID anyway. So that is, despite all the other problems, something that makes people a little more optimistic for our economy in Greece. But I was listening to Vesna, of course, and some very interesting comments she made, and particularly proposals as to how to move. And I would very much like to incorporate whatever possible conclusions you may have out of this this discussion today, and on the beautiful island in which you're on. Because, as you know, Ivan, I am now a rapporteur. It's a different role than I had before as foreign minister in 2003, but I am now been tasked to revisit this whole process from the Council of Europe, but in order to see how we can use the Council of Europe to promote the further accession process of the Western Balkans. So I want to use this report, not just simply to report on what is happening, but to somehow use it as a lever in getting things moving a bit more. So I'm very happy to be here with you, be in our virtual world with you, at least in the Future Symposium, Europe's Future Symposium, and dedicated to the memory of Erhard Busek, a politician, intellectual, champion of regional cooperation, who had dedicated his life to the promotion of peace and stability in the Balkans and the South and in Southeast Europe. So my comments around that will be a bit more general than what Vesna has made. So please bear with me. And I'm sure many of your participants will see these as almost self-evident, but they are not always so self-evident in the European Union. I think we need to repeat them. So as the war continues in Ukraine, and we have thousands of refugees that have fled the country, as we witness the horrors of violence, we are reminded of the tormented history of our broader region. We know that the Balkans, so often a theater for proxy wars or competition for spheres of influence by the great powers, has been scarred by conflict. And this makes Busek's words ever more important. We can very much identify with his commitment to mutual understanding, readiness for dialogue, and love for the region. In his last book, Balkans to Europe Now, that was published just a few months before his passing, he called for the Western Balkan countries to join the EU as soon as possible. The idea of the Balkans with diverse ethnicities living in peace together, where the rule of law prevails and all are respected on an equal and free society, in an equal and free society, has also been a long-standing vision in our region. And contrary to a stereotypical analysis of our peoples as somehow having conflict ingrained in our DNA, many in our region have fought for exactly the opposite, a vision of peace and coexistence with respect to our diversity. I can refer to Greek intellectuals and freedom fighters 200 years ago, such as Rigas Fereos and Adamantios Korais, influenced, of course, by the Enlightenment and the French Revolution, advocated exactly such a democratic vision for the Balkans 2 centuries ago. They advocated a democracy where, according to Rigas, the sovereign people will be all the inhabitants, without exception of religion or dialect, Greeks, Bulgarians, Albanians, Vlachs, Jews, Armenians, Turks, and any other ethnicity were his words. So the vision of our different peoples living in democracies side by side also goes hand in hand with another principle, the principle that in a just and democratic society, we have the rule of law and not the law of the powerful. This, of course, requires that we build such societies, ones where we all feel equal and are equal, treated equally before the law, in democratic societies, ones that respect the rights of each and every one of us. Minorities, but as you said, Vesna, also each personal freedom. Where we can, of course, enjoy our respective cultures, ours and our neighbors, without fear, either of oppression, exclusion, or persecution. A diverse richness to be cherished, a diverse richness which becomes empowering rather than debilitating for our societies, societies that guarantee prosperity, freedom, and peace. But this vision, this hope became a tangible one in the context of a European family, protecting these common values. It may have been around for many, many hundreds of years, but it became tangible as we saw Europe as a prospect. And this vision continues to live on even after the horrific wars in former Yugoslavia. Almost 20 years ago, in 2003, as you mentioned, Ivan, the European future of the Western Balkans looked secured with the Thessaloniki agenda. I was foreign minister then and in the presidency of the European Union. We worked hard to develop a new and comprehensive roadmap with concrete benchmarks to help safely guide the countries and the region, of course, to European Union membership. And the prospect of membership in a common family of European values, it provided enthusiasm. And this enthusiasm, this hope, became the dynamic force, the political force, if you like, for the difficult yet necessary changes in the Balkan nations. It also brought hope that peace finally would be embedded, replacing conflict, and that democratic rule of law would reign, replacing authoritarianism, persecution of minorities, and human rights violations. Prosperity will be the common goal, uniting former foes in a beautiful kaleidoscope of ethnic diversity and traditions. Our hope was that this vision was to bring closure to the Balkan tragedy of the 90s. However, 20 years later, this Thessaloniki agenda, the perspective of the Western Balkans joining the EU, is still under question. Serbia and Montenegro may have started accession negotiations, but they're very slow. Albania and North Macedonia have received the green light to begin negotiations, but again, no progress has been achieved. We know the reasons why. The consequence is that this vision is losing its shine. Frustration undermines trust in this European path, and the loss of trust pushes peoples back to their tribes, back to their clans, with nationalism resurfacing with a renewed assertiveness. This trend, of course, is not exclusive to the Balkans. We see a resurgence of nationalistic and xenophobic sentiment found in many corners of Europe, if not the world. It's not a moment to get into deeper analysis of this phenomenon, but certainly there are similar reasons. The failure of global cooperation to effectively deal with issues of huge inequalities, issues of social protection, population movements, health problems such as the pandemic and the environmental crisis. A multilateral system that seems to be breaking down and looks ineffective as these challenges loom large. And this, of course, has created insecurity, uncertainty, which has been exploited. However, there is an important difference in the Western Balkans. The wounds of bloody conflict are fresh, and reverting to nationalism and cynical transactional foreign relations is an easy task for demagogues, but it risks reopening these wounds and these conflicts. Today, the war in Ukraine brings back vivid memories of the wars around the breakup of the former Yugoslavia in the 90s. But even before the war in Ukraine, there was a worrying resurgence of tensions in the region. You mentioned Bosnia-Herzegovina, Vesna, but of course, between Serbia and Kosovo. We have seen outside interference seeking to destabilize the neighborhood and weaken the European Union. And with the continuing war and conflict, the invasion of Ukraine, geopolitical considerations to make a mess in this region, I'm sure, are on the minds of authoritarian leaders. The lack of progress in the accession process, the image of the EU unable to or unwilling to grab the bull by the horns, has fed into the autocratic Eurosceptic narrative in the region. It's undermined the inspiration of being European in sectors of the Balkans population, although I think that is still quite strong. It particularly has been, particularly by those hit harder in the multiple crises of the previous years. So wider issues of inequality and security affect their views towards our union, which has also been seen as ineffective or unwilling to tackle current challenges. After Russia's attack on Ukraine, and in the light of the influence from third parties in the Western Balkan region, which are the most vulnerable on the European continent, enlargement has become a security question. I quoted North Macedonia's Prime Minister Kovacevski, which he made earlier this month. And last March, EU High Representative Borrell admitted that we recognize the frustration in the region at delays in moving forward on the EU path. Our practical support and a clear way forward on EU integration are key to keep the region firmly on this path. The EU leadership seems to finally realize that it is time to move forward on EU integration. The multiple crises have also revealed institutional difficulties in decision-making processes in the European Union, and we just have finished a round of the conference on the future of Europe. But for example, during the refugee crisis, while the Commission had a potentially effective plan to deal with the refugee flows towards Europe, the European Council was unable to unite around these proposed measures, making the problem much bigger. Measures that called for a logical burden sharing. At the same time, domestic politics in some EU member states have blocked in several cases, the accession negotiations of North Macedonia and Albania. Well, we had 20 years of, and even more of this blockage, but I think it was very important that we were able to overcome it. There are those who might rightly point to the failings of reforms in some of the Western Balkans. However, it is the European Union that has the major role in keeping this process alive, this dynamic alive, in order to facilitate local leaders in their efforts for changes. The Western Balkans cannot be and should not be punished for the failings of the European Union. Of course, our responsibility in the Balkans, and in particular the candidate countries of the Western Balkans, is to live up to the criteria for membership. Reforms, democratic rule of law, transparency, fight against corruption, respect for minority human rights, good neighborly relations, all are paramount. And we need to work more closely as one, if you like, in this process. And I've been tasked to do a report for the Council of Europe, as I said, and how we can help the accession of the Western Balkans to the EU. But what I want to stress in this report also is how we can really develop our mutual cooperation. You mentioned the pairing, Vesna, which I very much agree, and I was again foreign minister when we paired up with a number of countries with that big wave of enlargement to 10 countries. We even paired with Turkey. That was a different time. Greece was pairing with Turkey and helping Turkey. So I would not at all disagree with that, but I would also want to stress that let's see how we can work together in the region. I know there may be less trust or more mistrust, and therefore trying to find some more neutral pairing partners may sound good, and I'm not against that. We worked with Estonia in Greece for many changes during our financial crisis and in digitizing our country. But I think we also need to see how we can work together, because don't forget, the Baltics and the Nordics, it wasn't just that they were pairing, they also worked very closely together. Of course, they've had a long history, particularly the Nordics, of working together, but that should be an example for us and use that for our work too. And of course, the outstanding issues of conflict need to be resolved. Membership is not simply a transactional carrot for the process of reform. It is part of the solution to these outstanding conflicts. So, for example, in 2018, the Prespa agreement between Greece and North Macedonia reaffirmed the commitment to building good regional relations, inclusive cooperation, and constructive relations. It showed that we can solve our problems, particularly as we have a common road and a common future towards Europe. And this obviously gave the strength and I would say the braveness of decisions, particularly in North Macedonia. And luckily, right after that agreement, rather than encouraging North Macedonia and Albania with it, by opening up negotiations, we had the slowdown, which of course was a very negative signal, not only to those two countries, but also to many others in the Balkans who have other conflicts or other problems, where they feel that, yeah, well, even if you do comply or make the big sacrifices for change, difficult political sacrifices, you may not be rewarded. So I think that was strategically very negative, and I think it's left its negative impact on our region. But for many years, the EU has been a catalyst for positive change in the region, encouraging the Balkans to resolve outstanding disputes, both as a prerequisite, but also to strengthen regional security. Strengthening democracy and rule of law, fighting corruption and organized crime, freedom of speech have been on the list of reforms for the candidate countries. And EU membership of the Western Balkans is, in fact, in the European Union's own, not only economic, political, but also security interest. And the EU needs to turn a page. It needs to strongly declare its willingness to do whatever it takes to make enlargement a reality. And certainly if the EU looks too distant for the Western Balkans, there are many other great or lesser great powers that are willing to fill a vacuum. As Carl Bildt, the former Swedish PM and Minister of Foreign Affairs and UN the UN Special Envoy for the Balkans, has underlined many times that the alternative for the Western Balkans is a slide backward into violence. It has happened before. It must not happen again in Europe. Now, of course, with the war in Ukraine, the EU is seriously considering the candidacy of 3 more countries: Ukraine itself, Moldova, and Georgia. This should be seen as a very stark realization by all in the European Union that we cannot stand by and let history overtake us, but that ourselves, we need to be the authors of our own history, which means deeper understanding of the challenges, the ones we face today, but also a stronger will to act together towards a common future. Thank you very much.
Very much for your words and the future-leaning orientation. As you, many of us have been in these endeavors, not only since 2003, but much longer. And I will recall the support that you were giving to the oppositional movement to Milosevic in the very tough days that we were living in Serbia, the support to the student movement, to Otpor, and I won't mention anything else. Thank you for reminding us, which I didn't say, of course, that you are in the Council of Europe, the rapporteur for the Balkans, and I'm sure that we can help. In fact, concretely, a group of Europe's Futures Fellows has just today published what is usually called a policy paper. It's called Six Fixes for the Western Balkans 6. We will share that with you and Vesna tonight immediately. You can hopefully put it immediately into your paper and recommendations. Of course, we are willing to discuss online and offline at any point as you prepare your report. And I will, of course, repeat what some of us know, but I didn't say you're also a member of the Greek parliament with your party. Some of us look forward to seeing you very soon during your annual retreat at CIMI, but I will leave that for later. I will ask Andreas Treichl now to say a few words along these subjects and these words so that you can hear them. Andreas is the chair of the board of the Erste Foundation. He's the former CEO of the Erste Bank, but much more importantly, someone who not only knows the region, but is committed to it. And the mere fact that the Erste Foundation, and Boris Marte is here, the CEO of the foundation, who have been, since the inception of the foundation, had Europe as one of the 3 focal areas of activity. And over all these years of the existence of the foundation, which is close to 20 years now, really dedicated a lot of energy and work and advocacy. And this is just one of the forms that advocacy takes. So Andreas, please.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks very much for your remarks, George. It was wonderful. And I just want to tell you, you look wonderfully young for a 60-year-old. I think I'm sort of the only businessman in a group of intellectuals and politicians. So I just want to give you from in a businessman style and my thinking about my takeaways from this conference. First of all, I really like the 6 fixes for the Western Balkan. The one I like the most is the 6th. Is that putting away with anonymity. I believe that anonymity has nothing to do with democracy. Actually, it's a form of negative autocracy. Because if you're alone in a group of 27, You cannot say yes and win. If you're alone in a group of 27, you can say no and you win. So it's a negative autocracy, is number one. Number two, autocracy works for one or two, but never for 27. So we got to take the occasion and put away with that thing. That's probably one of the most important things on bringing the EU forward. And why not use the accession of all 6 Western Balkan countries as the occasion to do that? Now, there is so much talk about that, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And should we do that or should we do it not? I know how it was to do business in the Czech Republic before it joined the EU. And I know how it is to do business in the Czech Republic today. I know how it is to do business in Romania, how it was to do business in Romania before it joined the EU, and it is today. Now, there's a big difference between Romania and the Czech Republic in the year 2022. But one thing you can say for sure, both countries improved dramatically, and they improved dramatically because their institutions grew stronger due to their membership in the EU. So let's stop screwing around. Let's just go and do it. Put away with anonymity and let the 6 Western Balkan countries join ASMP. And there's just one ice topping for all of that. We will not be able to inflict military defeat on Russia. We have to inflict political defeat on Russia these days. And one of the best forms to inflict political defeat on Russia is on having all the countries join the EU as soon as possible, including Moldavia, and God knows what happens to Georgia, and including Ukraine, and do it as fast as we can. It will never happen, but we have to wish for it. So it's the 6 countries.
You're here. I think you have more than 3 cheers on that. And the message, which is bold and courageous, and it happens now, is we need to inflict political defeat on Russia. And the way to do it is, the first step has been taken now to give candidacy to, hopefully giving candidacy to Ukraine and Moldova. But as all of us in this room know, it will take much, much more to do that. And that will require really leadership, to put it just in one word, at the level of the European Union. I will ask now Rector Prijić-Samaržija to come here and give her brief statement. George, thank you for being with us. You can stay on, but if you have other obligations, please feel free to leave us at this point. You heard what Andreas said, that we need to inflict political defeat on Russia. And
a very good point.
The way to do it is everything that you said on, and Vesna said on the ways that we advance these issues.
Very good point.
I'll give the.
I will be following as long as I can.
Okay, thank you very much. George.
Okay. Yeah.
Samaržija, please.
Thank you, Ivan. Allow me at the beginning to say that I definitely feel very much privileged to be today here with all of you. My special greetings, of course, goes to, and I'm definitely very much honored that Mr. Treichl and Mr. Marte are also here with us. So definitely, I hope that you spend successful and fruitful days here during our Treichl symposium. Allow me also at the beginning, to use this opportunity to be just a bit personal and to thanks to Ivan. So definitely we are very happy that have you as our friend and the friend of our university and the friend of our Center for Advanced Studies, as well as Hedvig. And I'm now speaking in front of directors of the Center for Advanced Studies and also University of Rijeka. Is definitely, we are very much thankful, and I will use this opportunity to thank you. Thank you. Also, I just want to share with you just a few things about Erhard. Allow me just to join, the previous speakers at film, and to say that the Erhard was the patron, our patron, the patron of the Center for Advanced Studies and the patron of the University of Rijeka and the member of the board of patrons of this Palace Moise. Patron, patron in the best sense. Patron actually means a kind of special guardian, and he was a special guardian, what actually means a supporter and a protector. We need definitely to be protected and to be supported. And I think that Boris said that we are all the children of the Busek, of the Erhard. He opened the door for all of us, and he really did it for the University of Rijeka. He chose University of Rijeka for establishing and supporting us to establish here the Center for Advanced Studies. He was, of course, a person. Of course, you all know that, a person of amazing energy, very politically wise. He has this political wisdom, the phronesis, we called it, in philosophy. But he was in love with Western Balkans, Southeast Europe. Also, somebody mentioned that, focused on that. I was so happy to see during the film that behind the Erhard was the campus of Rijeka, so it was really something. It means really something for us, and I actually would like to ask you to give us, that put, this film on our websites, because we really appreciated a lot these previous 10 years in which Erhard was behind us. Actually, I met him, during I was the vice rector, and I said today to Hedwig, actually, that my experience of Erhard, and I recognize that also at Hedwig now, when we achieved a goal, now the goal is just a starting point for another goal. And we are not, take a breath after something we did, but what we should do it next. Probably you know that the University of Rijeka Senate awarded Busek by the title of honorary professors 2 years ago. We were very proud and happy that we could do that. Unfortunately, we couldn't organize the ceremony because of the pandemic circumstances, and definitely I will miss it. This now it's over, but I'm so happy that we keep the memory and keep the legacy of the Erhard here at the center and this palace. Moise, I remember also that actually he supported us when this palace was in the phase of reconstruction. When the water was downstairs, we discovered that actually sea rises here, and we have a lot of troubles there, but he was here, and Director Shalini was here. Also we have the kind of past, with the IVM, and definitely I'm so happy to see here, IVM. We see here all of us. What actually I would like also to mention, remembering on the Erhard, was that actually he was our sponsor. I have to mention that he knows that our autonomy, the autonomy not only of the civic society, but also of the universities, the public institutions here in Western Balkan, actually relies on the financial autonomy. So you all know that we are on the state budget, and I can say here between friends that University of Rijeka is just kind of anomaly in the Western Balkan, in the Croatia, So we are recognized as very progressive university, and not always, financially supported for that. because of that, So we are different. We try to establish good connections with the universities in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We signed, as the only university from Croatia, memorandum with the Rectors Conference of Bosnia and Herzegovina. We also very enthusiastically support the Western Balkan Rectors Forum, cooperation between the Western Balkan countries. And here is somewhere Gazela. Actually, we signed an agreement between Ljubljana, Belgrade, and Rijeka. And now we try to also enjoy Sarajevo and the Podgorica there, and also Skopje, etc., etc. So why I mentioned that? Because when I talking about the Erhard, we definitely need to keep. We are obliged, to keep his legacy alive, keeping the networks between Western Balkan universities alive and research institutions alive. Actually, this last night, I'm coming from Dublin, where the Global Forum on Democracy, organized by the Council of Europe and some organization from US. The people from the 45 countries were there. And actually, the pessimism, we all felt a kind of pessimism. Yeah, optimism of the will, but the pessimism, based on reasons. And we all debated, of course, registered the crisis of democracy, the crisis of enlightenment. We all remind on the Goethe's words that the most frightening thing is, the ignorance in action. We all, apply or plead for the knowledge in action, but we do not see the formula for that. So we are all, thinking, how to be more concrete. Erhard always mentioned, what next? Be more concrete. Hedwig said, what is my homework? Yeah. We missed concrete action plan. So the people from all over the world, registered a crisis of democracy, but I'm not sure that we see how to cope with that democratically, on democratic way. So the Western Balkan, of course, is a very special place. Mr. Treichl also mentioned what the recipe could be as the businessman. I agree with you that we need to dream, how to keep all the countries, all the European countries together against authoritarian war happenings. So I definitely am happy that you were here, all of you, discussing, the Europe's future. We need it. We needed Council of Europe. I'm also participating in work of the Council of Europe. We now the first strategy for education, higher education and education now is created. I think that it will be, published or finished, the next year. So now we need all the power of all the stakeholders here. And I will finish just to mention the three main things. Actually, we would like that you help us to go further with that. First is, to develop, to keep a discussion about democracy alive. We here plan to establish a league, democratic league. We are thinking about that. So the Moise will be the center of study, research on democracy. So I would like to invite all of you to be with us in some form, in this form, like IVM fellows on other. The second point here is that we would like, that Moise will be the place, that can connect researchers from all the Western Balkan and Southeast Europe region, that we keep going the Erhard's legacy, to network, universities, research institutions. And the third, to try to develop the idea of, connection between the universities, between our sector and the political arena, decision-making arena, and to try to reconsider, reinvent, this kind of engagement of the universities. So thank you very much for the opportunity, to be here with you and to say something. Thank you.
Snježana, thank you very much for those words, also for the program ahead, but most of all for the continuation of the spirit of Erhard's legacy. And I think in our humble way, we have contributed to that, even with this event and with these 3 days. Everyone knew him. He was the special coordinator of the Stability Pact, where he made his name in an official capacity beyond all his private endeavors to bring the region together. I think that your university, under your leadership and with our colleagues here at the Center for Advanced Studies, Petar Bojanic and Sanja and Gazela from the Institute for Philosophy, and the links that you have established with all the universities, I think, are something that's quite unique. It takes effort, it takes leadership, but that's the way that we can carry the region forward, as George and Vesna were saying, into a region of prosperity. We have the capacity. There are people who want to do this. We have a slight problem with some of our leaders, but hopefully we will deal with that as well. We need to be bolstering the European Union and the leaders of the EU to take these bolder moves and to get more involved. I think we've concluded that there has been a bit of a wake up and that some moves have been taken. I think we can conclude the proceedings this evening by thanking Vesna Pusić, who's a friend of many of us and who had a true leadership role. And it was under her tenure and the tenure of her government that Croatia was the last member in line to join the European Union on the 1st of July 2013. I was happy to be in Zagreb on that day. Felt very special, and I was just hoping that I will live that one day in my city called Belgrade. So I'm still very hopeful. I know it'll take a lot of work, but also for all the other countries. And I'm glad that Vesna devoted a lot of time to Bosnia and Herzegovina, because that's very important. George, thank you very much for being with us. Hope to see you soon, and have a lovely evening. And continue celebrating your 60th birthday. Thank you to Hedvig. Thank you to, again, the already mentioned Petar and Sanja. Obviously, we will have ample opportunity to thank Dino at our party a little later on. He is very busy with very serious things, but we will be able to relax with Dino as well, who has really been the pillar organizational that has brought us here with everyone else who has been involved. And thank you to Nicola, who is quietly sitting over there. Nicola is a fortunate PhD candidate who will be moving to New York, to the new School for Social Research. Nicola, we will miss you, but you are going on to more important things, and you will come back as a doctor and maybe one day be a fellow with us. Thank you. So, to the beach party.